Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Tolkien with Friends. Today, Callie and I are very excited to welcome Kelly, aka at the middle page on Instagram and the middle dot page on TikTok. Make sure we get those ats correct. Thank you so much for joining us, Kelly.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I know like a while ago, I was like, when I first found out about this podcast, I was like, I sign me up. Can I come on? And you were like immediately like, yes. And I was like, this is perfect. So I'm really happy to be here.
Well, it's like one of the things that Callie and I have talked about, kind of off camera, and then me and Anna talked about more on the podcast, is just how there is a lot of discourse around Tolkien and these works, but it's primarily coming from a lot of dudes and so we're just out here adding our 2 cents because we think it's valuable, and we want to provide space for more women in the space to come talk. And so it's more like, of course we have like some of our guy friends on who are lovely, but really want to make this a really open and welcoming space to all the women and femmes in the fandom as well.
Absolutely. There's definitely a hole. I was just talking to my boyfriend about it not too long ago. I think before I because I've been on Tolkien Instagram for many years, and go on and off it depending on how life is treating me and how much attention I can pay towards it. So when I kind of revamped my middle page Instagram in February-ish, because Rings of Power is coming out, all this sort of stuff. Yep. And I remember talking to him and kind of having that same feeling of like, it is still so male dominated. And I know that there are so many female, non-binary, and more than just men's opinions and enthusiasm for this work. So it's really awesome to be here. And it's really awesome that you're giving that platform.
Yeah, well, we're out here, we're trying, and
yeah, thank you for being part of it.
Yeah, so excited to have you. So today is also an exciting episode because we are talking about the chapters Mount Doom and the Field of Cormallen, meaning we finally get to see the destruction of the One Ring and the Fellowship being reunited again. But before we get into that, Kelly, you reached out to us after we were talking about House of the Dragon. And I think since Anna can't be here with us, we need to hold that space for House of the Dragon in her honor and talk about dragons, so we don't have a dragon-sized gap in our show. That's so as of this, yes, for Anna. If I had any of my swords, I would like whip it out. But so as of this recording, depending on where it lands, we've only seen the one episode of House of the Dragon. The next one is coming out later tonight, and we're definitely already seeing more dragons on the show, which is great. Any thoughts on what we've seen so far and what we hope to see from particularly the dragons and not the people associated with the dragons?
We're only here for dragons.
I mean, they look, the way so far they remind me of just like big puppies. So so like this is Anna's realm, so I don't personally have a lot of expectations. I'm just like here for it, So I would love to hear both of your thoughts on what you would love to see on the show coming up.
Yeah, I mean, Callie, do you have any thoughts? I don't know. Are you a big Game of Thrones, House of Dragon person?
Slightly less than Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, but I've seen the first. I saw all of Game of Thrones, and I've seen this first episode, and I was interested by it. I already think I liked it. Did I like it more than the last season of Game of Thrones? Yes. I like the dragons for sure. The characters already kind of seem a little bit more relatable. I enjoyed the first episode. I did. There were some moments that were it was an all the feels episode. There was a lot.
Yeah.
There was a lot
ups and downs.
A lot of ups and downs, and the downs were pretty down, but the ups were pretty up. And yeah, I don't know what we're allowed to say. I don't want to spoiler anything by getting too into detail about it, but I look forward to seeing where some of these characters go for sure.
Right. I'm interested to see, like, I mean, I don't even remember everybody's name, but like the the daughter of the king. I'm really interested in
Yeah,
seeing her really
Rhaenyra.
because she clearly Rhaenyra, is that it?
Yes.
Okay. It's so the names are hard.
The names are
The
hard.
names are hard, yeah.
Names are hard. I need to say them like 40 times before I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. But and then Matt Smith's character is Damon.
Damon?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm interested to see like their relationship change because they clearly are. I mean, it was like a little tense whenever they were talking, but it was always like she's definitely not the heir. He's pretty sure the heir, and so he felt he's obviously pretty comfortable in like his position at that point, and like gives her that necklace. So now that the king has named her as his heir and is like, go away, my brother, and he's obviously not happy about it. I'm interested to see how that relationship changes because I know we're like gearing up for a civil war from what Anna has told me, so that'll be interesting. And I swear, like in Game of Thrones, when like we get two of our dragons die, I just hope that like we get to see a lot more of the dragons like do out and about and like doing their thing before any like things break out, because I'm sure that there's gonna be like, I'm sure they're gonna use them against each other, which also the idea of that hurts me. But Rhaenyra's her dragon seems so sweet. Like when they were like at the funeral at the end of the episode and she's like trying to tell him to like light the pyre, he like looked at her like, really? Are you sure?
Want to do that?
Yeah, it was really cute. So I'm interested to see like all the different personalities of the dragons and like how they're, how some people say like their dog looks like them or like people's dogs look like their owners or
behave sort of have same
the same. I wonder if they're kind of do any of that where they're just like, or like a dragon is just a dragon, you know what I mean? Like are they all just kind of like, are some more testy than others, or how they're going to do that?
That's what I was thinking is when you ask like what would I want or what would be interesting to see move forward with the dragons, definitely a sense of agency to really see these dragons on their own and then also see them with their owners. I don't know if owners
their people
masters.
They're connected.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I think the relationship between Damon and his dragon is going to, I mean, he took his dragon with him. And he made a point to show that they had that relationship. So, how loyal will they be? I don't think everyone has that connection that Daenerys did in hatching those dragons and really being mother to those dragons. So, 200 years before when dragons were just kind of around, were they given to people from birth? I actually don't know the history or not. Maybe that's
I don't know either
already, and maybe not. But I think definitely seeing some agency when they're out and about on their own, and then how that reflects to the humans around them would be fascinating.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Anna was telling me about how like sometimes like in the story, it might have been earlier before like this timeline or like earlier in this timeline, but that how sometimes the dragons don't always do it, like you say, I want to land here, and they'll be like, no, I don't like that, and they go and they take you somewhere else, and then you're like in the wrong location. Yeah, like I think that there was a person in the story that's happened to, and they just like had to live in a different country I
bet that all the time, right?
I mean, it's like I bet it's hard to like I don't know how you would get a dragon to do anything for you, but you know what I mean? So there must be something about like taking their eggs and giving them to people early or when they're tiny, maybe. I don't know.
There's some bonding that happens between dragon and rider.
It has to, because I can't imagine you just like walking up to a fully grown dragon and being like, hello,
you're mine now.
Yeah, we're going to go to places together. Like,
are we best friends?
Right. I think we're best friends. I wonder if there's anything like, in Harry Potter, when like the way you have to approach a hippogriff or whatever, is there anything like that? not that George is anything like in the world of
Right.
Harry Potter, but
I mean, that's just
You know.
animals in general, like even
Yeah.
dogs, which are, on the most part, very, very friendly. And unless they've been, treated poorly, I think.
right.
But I mean, even with a new dog, or new animals in general, even animals out in the wild, there's a certain way that you have to approach them, because we are animals ourselves, but we are all quite different.
Yeah.
We're not in that world, so we welcome them into our world, and they welcome us. So I would imagine.
I took
so.
care of a llama once for a summer at a
Okay.
at a camp.
Wow.
And I imagine it would be like that, where you approach it with respect, a great healthy amount of respect, and you avoid the spitting end, the front end, so the fire end, and you just come around the side, around the neck, and you let them know you're there, and then you move up to the front and you show them you have offerings, and
Wow.
I imagine it would be something like
Dragons are llamas, everybody.
Did you have like a bond with the llama by the time you left it?
Yeah, so I was none of the other counselors would go near this thing, because they, I had put in a summer of patience and like very, very slow bonding with it. So by the end of the summer, I was the only person like who could feed it or do anything with it.
It's really special though.
It is, yeah.
Dragons are llamas.
Dragons are llamas.
You heard it here first.
And that's canon.
You hear that, George?
So funny. Yeah. Anything else that you're looking forward to for House of the Dragon? I know that that's not really why we're here, but
just good writing. Good writing would be really nice. I'm also rewatching Game of Thrones with my boyfriend, and I've seen it a few times, but it's just it's so nice to revisit those really, really well written episodes.
Yeah.
And I know what's coming. He kind of knows what's coming. He hasn't watched it in full. He knows how the last season. But I think that they wouldn't go forward. They couldn't go forward with this show unless they had some good writing. I think. So I'm really looking forward to that.
And when I've seen some clips of George talking about the show on TikTok just pop up, and he does seem like in a better, like he does seem happier with this show.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to where this goes. And in thinking about dragons, and this being a Tolkien themed podcast, I think it'd be interesting to talk about how, in our story, Lord of the Rings that we're covering, Middle Earth is dragonless. Like, we know that Smaug happened, and he was the last dragon to trouble the world. However, he was certainly not the only dragon to ever live on Middle Earth, nor was he the biggest or the baddest, you know what I mean? So, I thought it would be fun if we kind of talked about the differences and like the dragons from Middle Earth. Whereas so far the dragons in House of the Dragon, they are like a legit animal. They don't have speaking abilities or anything like that. I mean, I'm sure they have their own priorities and things that they're thinking about, but we haven't really seen things from like their perspective or heard from them per se, whereas Smaug, he definitely talks, and our very first dragon, Glaurung, is definitely a talker.
He's a big
back
talker.
In the first stage. To the detriment of everyone. So yeah, I thought it would be interesting to bring the dragon conversation back to Middle Earth as well.
So Glaurung, I love that Glaurung speaks. I mean, and he speaks to such a doomed end. Like,
yeah. So for anybody do you want to talk a little bit about who Glaurung is for our folks who may only have watched Lord of the Rings, the film?
Glaurung. So okay, I didn't do recent note taking on some Glaurung, but if
Just
you have
general.
general. one of the biggest, baddest dragons that we actually know and we actually hear and see from in the Silmarillion, mostly in the Turin-Turambar chapter. He is great and mighty and knows a lot of what's going on around him and uses that knowledge for the downfall of characters, and speaks truth, speaks lies and speaks truth to different varying effects. And he is completely destructive, not just from beating his wings and, flowing like flames, but with his words and his presence, and his eyes. And that I think that does that majesty of the Glaurung's majesty, I think affects how dragons are taken in modern fantasy quite a lot, because it's more than just them being a monster. It's more than just being a great beast that has the power to destroy. They oftentimes have the power to change and destroy within, like with this very small ways.
Yeah, they're like often portrayed as like super manipulative.
Yep.
And they can and it's funny because where we have people or characters, like Morgoth being the biggest one and Sauron later, and even Saruman, they're out for their own gains and their own ends. But like Glaurung, and he definitely is like he is like, I feel like he's got a direct line to Morgoth often, and he is able to kind of know a lot about what Morgoth is thinking. And I don't even know how he created Glaurung, if he put a little bit of himself into him. But like, I also feel like Glaurung doesn't really care so much about like Smaug definitely doesn't care about like anybody's business, but I just feel like he's just out to like wreak the most havoc he can. And obviously doing that on Morgoth's behalf is like the easiest way to do it, because he's just he's one of those characters where like it's like he knows and loves how bad he is, and I think that's what makes him kind of fun. He literally, as he's dying, he's like laughing at Turin, like, haha, you're still an idiot.
Bye.
Lol.
He's like, you still married your sister, you dummy.
Oh, jeez.
Nope.
So he's like, who really lost?
I'm glad y'all are giving much more majestic descriptions of Glaurung, because I honestly just think of him as a Balrog taxi.
Oh,
the dragons I think they should absolutely be feared. And I think, both are weapons of Morgoth. I think dragons are obviously more intelligent. I think a lot of that has to do with the creation of Smaug first, kind of. And like Tolkien, based that in from other sources, from other medieval and Anglo-Saxon or in Norse sources, where they do speak and they do have agency, and they do have wants and desires that are separate from their big bad boss. And a lot of that is, Smaug and Glaurung both, I think, act independently and really kind of revel in the destruction of the world around them a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that like sometimes when people hear about the dragons of Middle Earth, like everybody wants to talk about Encalagon the Black, who's just like huge,
really large,
just a big boy, you know what I mean? But like, what's sad to me about him is that like I've never seen anything where you really get to know him as like a character, and I'm like, well, dang. Like he is more like Game of Thronesy in that he's just out to do things, but he's not like, we don't get to get in his head or like learn about him really.
He doesn't really have a personality. He is
massive.
Just like massive.
He's massive.
Took out some mountains on his way down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I was thinking about. Like we do have, we've got like 3 for sure named dragons. We know that more existed. We know that more fought with the dwarves in the Third Age, at like 2570 of the Third Age. And there's like cold drakes and
Fire drakes.
fire
Oh,
drake. I mean,
yeah.
there's. We know we got different types. We know that they end up eating a bunch of the dwarven rings. But
Nom, nom, nom.
yeah, it's interesting how like it's interesting how they're woven in, but the only ones we really get to know are Glaurung and Smaug, the first and the last. And so I mean I can only assume that they all are just kind of like thinking their own personal thoughts about whatever it is that they're doing. But I was thinking about this, and it is like pretty much a good chunk into the Third Age, but I'm wondering with like the way they're redoing the timeline in Rings of Power, if it's possible that we would see any dragons, because they're not really talked about in the Second Age at all, but they have to be around if they're there in the Third Age to fight with, Durin's folk.
Funnily enough, I had not even thought about dragons in Rings of Power. That's really
It's
fascinating.
definitely on our minds. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, there definitely could be. I don't know. I don't see a reason, but I am a writer, so
Yeah, or even just like a
Yeah.
flashback or something, like
yeah.
we seem to see.
Or even if it's just kind of like I don't know how much traveling is going to happen. Like we know from like the previews and things that Galadriel is like on the hunt for servants of Morgoth, and mostly Sauron. And we know that Gandalf in the Third Age was worried about Smaug because he was worried about Sauron using Smaug, like forming a little alliance there. So I wonder if Galadriel will ever have a similar thought. Not that it's easy to take out dragons, and a lot of them. I mean, it's not really clear to me how they get all taken out, or how they leave Middle Earth, and we're only left with Smaug. So
But
it's
you're
a
right.
potential.
Yeah, that's a hole that they could fill. I mean, that's I think what they're trying to do with a lot of things is, all of these missing pieces. How did we get from here to there? And that could definitely be one. And there's a lot of answers that they could give that, we simply don't have. And if they do it in a really interesting and intelligent way, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
These questions are going to keep me up at night now. Where did they go? Why did they go? When did they go?
I think there could also be like, there's lots of flashbacks, but there's also a lot of like flash forwards, like visions and stuff that we see in the Palantiri. So there could be some foreshadowing and some visions possibly of what could happen if the dragons were still around.
Ooh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there is a dragon-sized hole in the Second Age, and I wouldn't be mad if somebody tried to
kind of like dropped a dragon in there.
Yeah, just like a little peekaboo. I don't know. I'm easy to please.
What's interesting though is like if you looking at this like actually like meta is we do have House of Dragons and Rings of Power at the same time, and they're not just airing first episodes of like relatively close weeks within each other, but they will be airing week after week and have like similar structures. So if there's something to it, and they might pull some inspiration from House of Dragons, or they might stay away from it for that very same reason.
That's true. I mean, we know we see that sea monstery dude in the preview. I mean, we was just like some kind of like fin situation. So I wouldn't be surprised if we somehow got more of that. Maybe they don't necessarily take out any dragons or something, but maybe they avoid some dragons or something.
They could be focusing on Balrogs instead.
Yeah, we know that that's a part of the trailer.
They made a big deal of it, yeah.
Yeah, so that's true. That's true. Maybe they'll just be like, you know what? Only specifically Middle Earth related creatures for now. Who knows? Who knows? But I'm just throwing it out there. If anybody,
We wouldn't be mad if there was a
Yeah,
dragon.
won't be mad.
Wouldn't be mad.
That's all I'm saying. So, I mean, I guess with that, speaking of evil creatures, maybe we just head to Mordor, head to Mount Doom,
Yeah.
ladies.
Do it.
Okay, so I forgot to say this before, but if you are following along in the film, today we're talking about the section from 3 hours and 21 minutes and 28 seconds in to 3 hours and 42 minutes and 40 seconds in. So it's like 20 minutes of movie, not that much. Of course, extended edition of Return of the King. So the last time we saw our heroes, Frodo and Sam were about to climb Mount Doom, and the rest of the Fellowship, more or less, are about to fight for their lives at the Black Gate. Besides the fact that the events of this chapter are sped up, to me, it feels pretty faithful to the books.
Yes.
And honestly, it's really one of the shortest chapters we've seen in a while. And you know, I was just thinking about how like Peter was probably like looking at some of these iconic lines and was like, no, we're just going to use, there's no veil between me and the Wheel of Fire. I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. And, you know, I'm glad you're here with me here at the end of all things. Like, Tolkien did your job. Like, you don't need to change this. But there are some interesting changes or omissions that I would love to discuss with you two, starting with, and this also kind of is making me think about Rings of Power, how they're, for the first time in this chapter, but also in The Land of Shadow, we start to see Tolkien throwing in some of Sauron's thoughts. You know, it never usually says his name, he usually says the dark power or the eye or something. But just for everyone's reference, I've got a few of them here. So back in the Land of Shadow, we see Sauron clearly thinking about Aragorn, which makes sense. You know, as we previously discussed, Aragorn is making the bluff, you know, making it out as though he has the ring to confuse Sauron. Like that's all, the whole plan is like, you're gonna go with a bunch of guys, but not enough guys. So it makes it look like you must have another weapon ready to go. Because why would you be so bold to only go out there with like 6,000 dudes? And it's definitely working. It says, the dark power was deep in thought, and the eye turned inward, pondering tidings of doubt and danger. A bright sword, a stern and kingly face it saw, and for a while it gave little thought to other things, and all its great stronghold, gate on gate and tower on tower, was wrapped in a brooding gloom. So we've got like a description of kind of the way Mordor is kind of getting gloomier. Because Sauron is like really focused, he's like honing in on Aragorn and probably some of what he saw in the Palantir, and he knows that they're coming, you know. And then in this chapter, we have in Mount Doom, we have Frodo and Sam making their way to the Fiery Mountain. And we notice that our hobbits aren't coming across many orcs on their road. And it reads, neither man nor orc now moved along its flat gray stretches, for the Dark Lord had almost completed the movement of his forces, and even in the fastness of his own realm, he sought the secrecy of night, fearing the winds of the world that had turned against him, tearing aside his veils, and troubled with tidings of bold spies that had passed through his fences. And I wanted to bring this one up because in our last episode, we talked about how the mouth of Sauron had, you know, thrown the mithril coat at everybody, or like shown that to everybody, and acted like Frodo was being tortured. And we know that, and I was like, how much does Sauron realize that Frodo is, or like whoever that mithril coat belonged to? I don't even, he doesn't know who it was really. Like how much of it, you know, is he aware of? Like obviously he's lying, but you know, I was just thinking like, does he think Frodo's still at Cirith Ungol? Does he know that he's escaped? But like here is where it's like, yeah, he knows that he's out running around there somewhere and he's worried about it. But at the same time, the way that he's acting is allowing Frodo to get closer to Mount Doom. So I thought that was really interesting. And then probably my favorite moment where we're kind of checking in with Sauron is as Frodo and Sam come upon the road to the Crack of Doom, the clouds move for a brief moment because we've talked about how Sauron is kind of creating this extra gloom around him, and the clouds move and Frodo sees the Tower of Barad-dûr, and it says, "One moment only it stared out, but as from some great window immeasurably high, there stabbed northward a flame of red, the flicker of a piercing eye. And then the shadows were furled again, and the terrible vision was removed. The eye was not turned to them. It was gazing north to where the captains of the west stood at bay, and thither all its malice was now bent, as the power moved to strike its deadly blow. But Frodo, at the dreadful glimpse, fell as when stricken mortally. His hand sought the chain about his neck." And so I was just thinking about like Sauron knows that there's somebody walking around Mordor that he doesn't want there, but he is so obsessed with like Aragorn and the potential that he's so convinced that Aragorn must have the ring that he can't think about anything else, like obviously to his own detriment. And it's interesting that like, and I wonder if it's like because Frodo has the ring that he's able to, it's all like talking about the Dark Lord and the eye and a flash of flame, but I'm almost like, and we know from what Gollum has told us is that he's got a physical form, unlike what we see in the movies, that Sauron has hands, he's missing a finger. And so I'm almost like, because Frodo has the ring, for a brief second, did he like catch a actual glimpse? Like, I know it calls it a flicker of flame, but like of the eye. But I'm almost like, did Frodo catch an actual glimpse of Sauron like brooding in his tower for a second here?
I mean, maybe. I think it might be vague on purpose a little bit. I think I love the idea of Frodo maybe catching a glimpse of Sauron when Sauron is completely overlooking him. It's the complete underestimating of the Hobbit and the Little Folk, and the two hobbits and their friendship and their ability to together go up the slopes of Mount Doom and defeat him.
Could Frodo, so there's like this ring thing where ring bearers can see other ring bearers or former ring bearers, or do you think Frodo was getting like some sort of special inside?
It kind of feels like it.
Look, because as a ring bearer, like to ring bearer. But.
Yeah. It's like looking at the window from that afar.
Oh yeah, that's an eagle eye shot there.
That kind of like zero in of like mentally and physically being able to kind of see into that window.
Yeah, because it makes me think of the moment when he's on the seat of Amon Hen and he's wearing the ring. I mean, obviously he's not wearing the ring, but he's like in the ring's neighborhood. And he's wearing it and he's able to like see, and that's like the first time where he does like freak out because he can tell that Sauron is like searching for him. But he's also able to see like all these like war-torn areas and like just like pretty much in any direction he looks, he can see for hundreds of miles. And I'm almost like, with the ring, because the ring is definitely very active at this point, and so far like the way that it's kind of driving Frodo mad at the same time. So I wonder if just the proximity to it would have given him like a little flash, like it, because it didn't really work, the same way. Or maybe even just Sauron is in his room near this window and he's doing some kind of sorcery thing to make this flame pop up. I don't know, but I kind of like the idea of him being able to,
like some dark magic kind of, or like his letting his guard down a little bit, and then Frodo kind of glimpse, like sneaking in and just like seeing that for a split second. It's really interesting.
Yeah. And also just like this is all of the characterization that we see of Sauron really in the books. I mean, outside of the appendices of what Sauron is, but it's interesting. I wonder if the showrunners will draw upon any of this as far as the way that Sauron is. I mean, when he's thinking about something, he's just so like singularly focused, and if they will use any of this for inspiration in the way that they write whoever ends up being Sauron in the show.
Yeah, I can see that happening for sure. Especially with, whatever Galadriel does, and her taking advantage of that and learning that relatively quickly could be really, really interesting fodder for their dynamic between one another.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's just like, it's so interesting to think about how, for the most part, Tolkien puts us in the shoes of whoever's kind of like least aware of what's going on. And a lot of the times it's Sam, or, it's Merry and Pippin if we're separated, you know what I mean? But here he's kind of like, by the way, here's what Sauron's doing. It's an interesting like perspective shift, because it's almost always starting out with describing the scenery around them or like the physical situation that they're in, and then it kind of like pans over to what Sauron's thinking about.
Well, I also wonder too, there's not much room in Frodo's mind. When Tolkien goes on, those descriptions, it's most often how the characters are influenced and affected by their surroundings. It's not just the surroundings themselves. It's the character's experience with that. Frodo, where he is right now, can't have those he can't have an interaction with his surroundings because he's solely focused and taken over by the ring. So the one thing he can focus on, the one thing he can kind of feel affected by is Sauron.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought.
Yeah.
So it's kind of almost like, here's how Sam's like this. Sam's
able to see and feel and experience, and Frodo is zeroed in.
Frodo's naked in the dark, right? Is how he puts it. Yeah.
Yeah. No veil between him and the wheel of fire.
Yeah.
And I just have to say that, like, I still like, we touched on this last time, but Elijah Wood does such a good job at this point of
the
just
acting.
being, like, just
him crawling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like him, like
really good
desperation, and like he's still doing it, but like the fear, I don't know, like everything is so good, and I just wish that in the movies that they had kind of saved all of that for just in Mordor, rather than like, because Frodo's been kind of like overcome by evil like a few times, whereas he's supposed to be very resilient to it, and resistant to it. So I mean, it's just like he does such a phenomenal job, and like, obviously if Sean Astin doesn't have you sobbing at any moment of this, like,
oh god, the little and the looks between them, I mean, the eyes, it's all in the eyes. It's incredible how they made those words on the page come to life in their acting.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
they do a fantastic job. And something that in relation to their bond and like their how they're interacting with each other, there is a moment here when Frodo, after seeing his little glance of Barad-dûr or whatever it is he's seeing, this is one of the only times that we have Frodo explicitly ask Sam for help. And it's, help me, Sam, hold my hand, I can't stop it. He can't stop grasping he's trying to put the ring on, and he's like, I can't not do it at this point. You know what I mean? Like, Sam has helped him in the past with stuff like this without Frodo ever having to say anything, but at this point he's like, I don't have it left, I don't have anything left. And so this, Sam holds his hand and then carries him again for that last stretch up the mountain. And Sam in that moment assumes that Sauron has seen them based on Frodo's reaction, even though luckily he hasn't. And so he's just trying to get to the door to the crack of doom as fast as possible. Just like in this chapter, we see Sam like lose hope completely, but yet harden his resolve multiple times. And
it's his best moment. His best moment where he thinks, so this was my mission. This was my mission, to die with Frodo. You know, it's really up until this point that he thinks he's going to go home. And it's really only here until he really realizes we don't have enough provisions. We're not going back. And what is the quote? It's like his hobbit face hardened. Like, it's like, it brings back the idea of like him being a hobbit and pulling strength from that. And it just really reminds you of how incredibly strong he is, and hobbits are in general. But I love that moment. It's only at the darkest does he maybe he gives up on the journey home, but he doesn't give up on Frodo.
Exactly. Like, he loses hope for himself and for Frodo, really. But he doesn't lose hope for the quest.
Yeah.
He's like, you know what?
I made a promise. I have to see that through.
Yeah, he's like, we've made it this far. You know, we're not gonna give it up now. And
but we know in Tolkien that oaths are never taken lightly. So
yeah.
I mean, if you think about that moment too, of him saying, this is it, I'm gonna carry out my oath until the end, and then you juxtapose it with Frodo saying, I'm glad you're here with me here at the end of all things. It's just so beautiful for them to have those individual moments for each other. Just like such good writing.
It is so good. It is so good. And I'm just like, their relationship is so sweet. It is I mean, we should all hope to have like our Sam or even our Frodo. You know what I mean? Like, he's just so definition of ride or die, you know? And just how it's like, and you know, we're getting to a point where like everyone's freaking starving and thirsty, and Frodo is so small now that like Sam doesn't even, you know, worry about having to carry him. He's like, yeah, I got this, you know. All that, carrying all those pots and pans, all these hundreds of miles, you know. Yeah, you know, he's got some strong thighs and back, you know what I mean? And I'm sure Frodo weighs less than that. Although I'm always a little sad when Sam has to toss his pots and pans. But I love that he's like, doesn't want Gollum to get them or anybody.
The like, little stinker.
He's like petty about them. He's like, don't go near my precious pots. Like,
he throws them into like a pit somewhere.
Not that Gollum cooks his food anyway.
Yeah.
I'm like, he just can't stand the idea.
It's just that's which is fair after everything that's happened.
Yeah, but he makes sure to keep the Galadriel's gift, both to Frodo and to Sam, the file, as well as the dirt and seeds, you know, and like their elven cloaks and things like that. But like the backpacks, and he kept some lembas bread in his pocket or something, but like most of it.
It's true what Frodo says, I shall carry no weapon, foul or fair. I think that's really telling too, is they really are discarding all of the elements that they've used thus far to propel them on their journey. This is it. Get rid of them.
Yeah, it's tough. But you know, speaking of oaths, then we've got Gollum, who probably made the most treacherous promise of all, which was, you know, to help Frodo and not to harm him. And he swore on the ring.
On the precious.
On the precious. So here we have Gollum show up in full again. We saw him briefly previously, but now he is back, you know, just as they make it to the door. And, you know, it's interesting, like, in the movie, it's not that big of a difference. Like, Frodo still walks away and goes first, but in the book, he Frodo beats him. It makes a point of saying like how shriveled Gollum has become and how like poorly he has done since they've been in Mordor. Whereas Frodo and Sam has been making sure they've been eating and like getting water and stuff. But I feel like Gollum this whole time has just been driven by rage and has lost his mind a little bit after the whole Shelob thing not working out. And so they do fight, but Gollum is so weak and Frodo is a little bit crazy because he's trying to take the ring. And so Frodo wins, but Sam has a moment where he sees Frodo as like a figure robed in white with a wheel of fire at his breast, and out of the fire a voice says, "Begone and trouble me no more. If you touch me ever again, you shall be cast yourself into the fire of doom." And so, in the movie, they don't really touch on the promise that Gollum made. They have the scene, but they never really show like what that means or how that affects Gollum in any way. And to me, this is like more than Frodo saying, "Back off, dude." It's the ring telling Gollum what's going to happen if he betrays his promise to Frodo, that which, as we just said, was made on the ring. And, ultimately it comes true because Gollum attacks Frodo one more time inside the mountain and in his triumph falls into the fire. So it's really interesting how like they have Gollum make the promise in the movie, but they never really show like how it changes Gollum's behavior or how that is explicitly tied to his falling. And so therefore they have to have Frodo be the one that kind of like knocks him into the fire accidentally, and they're both trying to get the ring. Any thoughts on that, on how like Gollum's promise plays out or how it's portrayed in the film?
I think that idea that you just had is wonderful. I think that
I haven't, I hadn't heard
I'm
that
still thinking about it.
I love that. That's phenomenal.
I always kind of read it as just something from it feels ancient, feels something from afar. It feels like something else that's not happening right now, but from a song. Like it kind of feels like has that myth feel to it. And I never really thought about it as being like the here and now of the ring holding on to its bargain. Which I think is just so good.
Because there's a similar thing that happens in the Emyn when Gollum is, making the promise, and Sam sees Frodo again, like kind of as like a kingly figure, and Gollum is like a dog pawing at his feet. And it's almost like Gollum has sworn to serve Frodo, and it's almost like this moment is like, okay, like here we are again, and you're trying to break it, but it cannot be broken. And it's fascinating. So because Sam sees this vision and is like, okay, weird. And then Frodo walks off, tall and erect, but slowly. And he's like, I'm going to deal with Gollum. This is what I've been waiting for, and Gollum begs for his life. And Sam's like, not worth it. And he tells him to go away. And then Gollum obviously does not go away. But then he goes to catch up with Frodo. And so it's like, that also reminds me of when they're in the Emyn and Frodo saves Sam from Gollum. And he is like, it's threatens his life, but then he's like, well, now that I do see him, I pity him. And it's not until you have that choice, that like where you clearly have the upper hand, that suddenly it hits you that like Gollum is miserable. Like this is I don't know, it's not worth it. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think exactly like your point on pity is really important, because pity stayed his hand with Bilbo, with Frodo, and at that last moment with the ring will not have pity. The ring will cast you in. That pity is gone. You don't, the ring, whether it's itself, working through Sauron, working through
Mhm.
Frodo at that moment, the ring does not have the pity that the hobbits do. And it's gone.
Yes.
I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, it's just like, and I get that this is like hard to communicate through film. And I'm not saying that like they should have necessarily, but I am saying that like here is where the books and the movies really differ. One of my biggest like things that I'm always harping on is like the difference of how Gollum and Frodo and Sam's relationship is in the book, and how, you know, there is supposed to be this like, it's almost like you can't help yourself but to feel sorry for Gollum, and I don't think it like comes across so much in the film, and but also like it's interesting to have Frodo say this, you know, like you shall be cast into the fire, because he has always been the one being like, no, Sam, like we gotta,
Yeah.
you know,
There's redemption.
mhm.
Possible redemption.
Possible, yeah. And you know, as we've talked about recently, is that, I mean, that moment on the stairs of Kid Thungle was like a big turning point for Gollum, but I also think for Sam, like that he just couldn't, it was almost, he didn't have the moment of pity until too late, till just now. But at the same time, before Frodo says here at the end of all things, he's saying to Sam that Gollum, you know, Sam is saying that Gollum is gone forever, and Frodo responds, yes, but do you remember Gandalf's words? Even Gollum may have something yet to do. But for him, Sam, I could not have destroyed the ring. The quest would have been in vain, even at the bitter end. So let us forgive him, for the quest is achieved, and now all is over. I am glad you are here with me, here at the end of all things, Sam. So it's like, as soon as Frodo snaps out of it, you know, he's back to, I mean, he's always calling back to these words from Gandalf. I mean, I feel like Gandalf is often their guiding light. There is a moment as well, what we were just talking about, when Sam loses his hope, but at the same time is like, I don't think Gandalf would have sent Frodo on a mission with no hope. But hey, I don't see it right now. So, you know, I just love these callbacks to Gandalf, and you know, these two who fully have no clue that Gandalf has come back.
Right.
So I don't know. I think it's just really beautiful, and I love that, like, Frodo at his core, I mean, he is so, not only is he like wise and everything, but he's just a good guy, you know?
Yeah, you're right. He doesn't waste a moment between, I mean, he's not even like, man, that guy like bit my finger. Like,
Right?
Yeah, I know,
like,
right?
ow, that hurt, Gollum.
Yeah.
He's like, forgive him. He helped. I think that's just such a testament to his character. I think you're right.
Yeah, totally agree. Oh, that's not in the movie. There's so many things that I wish I could change about Frodo just a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
Not that I would want to take away from like their sweet moment that they have, you know, like, I'm glad you're here with me. Well, Sam is like crying about Rosie.
Yeah, Rosie.
Oh yeah, Rosie Cotton.
Rosie
Yeah.
Cotton dance.
If I could have married anyone, it would have been her.
Frodo's like, what?
Yeah, he's like, well,
How dare you?
I'm right here, Sam.
Right here.
I mean, he literally does do that. Oh, they're so precious. And then, you know, so if we're back to the movie, you know, we do see at this moment, you know, the Black Gate falling in on itself, and Tolkien doesn't describe Barad-dûr falling, but I think it definitely works as far as just the way that I mean, because we always have Sauron as a big eyeball in,
if it didn't disappear, if it didn't crumble,
yeah,
there'd be a huge thing missing just visually, and if you saw the armies crumble without that big representation of what and who Sauron was for 3 films.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah, I think that it's like, well, if the Black Gate is gonna fall, like, might as well make Better fall down too. And the way that he just kind of like the eye, it obviously looks like it's in pain, and then it like blips, you know.
Yeah, it does like this stressful thing.
Yeah, it's like I mean, you can't make my eyeball pop out of my head, but
and don't do that. That's
you know what I mean?
None of us try to visualize.
But the way that it widens, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fear. It's fear for the first moment that we've seen.
Yeah, exactly. And but we do get a visualization of something a little different that I thought was really interesting, and I wanted to call it out. It describes a huge shape of shadow, impenetrable, lightning crowned, filling all the sky. Enormous, it reared above the world and stretched out towards them a vast, threatening hand, terrible but impotent. For even as it leaned over them, a great wind took it, and it was all blown away and passed. And I'm like, where the movie gives us eye blip, you know, kind of flipping out of existence, is this Sauron's spirit leaving Middle Earth, like with the destruction of the ring?
I think Saruman's did a similar thing when
he's definitely wind on the, you know, like an evil wind or something.
Yeah, I would say that's what it is. Like just, but then he doesn't go because we know that he's not. Where does he go? Where does that go?
I don't know. There's probably not much left of him. I mean, you know, to his own detriment, because he poured so much of himself into that ring, which is a physical object that can be destroyed. So I'm sure there's something left of him, but not enough to do much.
I think it is a representation of Sauron's spirit leaving, but I think it's also indicative of nature's response to Sauron, because the relationship of nature within Middle Earth between what's going on, you know, and we'll see this, you see this time and time again, but we'll see this next with nature kind of returning and spring happening and the white tree glowing when literally the return of the king is a steward of land and earth. And so having that nature's elements at play, you know, is always going to be important. So having this, you know, look, and especially the sky too, the sky and the stars and the clouds and everything is so important with what's going, it's always mirrors what's happening within the character's journey. And so to have this, you know, to have this missing would be, you can't do it. If you're Tolkien, you can't not talk about what the sky looks like at the end of the evil thing.
Yes.
Right. So you have to have this clearing of the sky so that you can see the stars clear again. A new hope, kind of, you know, a new dawn.
Those stars are so important.
Yes.
They are very much.
It's so interesting how Tolkien, as soon as Aragorn, you know, like there's a point where Legolas is like, the wind is changing, and everyone was like, okay, weirdo. Like back at the Pelennor Fields, they're like, what are you talking
elf.
about? Yeah, they're like, where, you know? But then like really, like as soon as Aragorn comes up and everyone, like ever since that moment, we've constantly been seeing this wind returning, and like whether it's showing Sam the stars that are still shining above Mordor, or it's blowing this massive shadow away. I mean, we've seen it for several chapters now, and it does feel a little
also
divine.
Like, is it a stretch to think that like the wind from eagle's wings? You know? Yeah.
I do love when the eagles show up. And you know, they're just kind of cool in the movie. You know, I like that we do kind of get to see them like try to battle it out with the fell beast, with the Nazgul, even though in the book they actually like the Nazgul are actually being told to like get the hell out of there, go get to my mountain, there's a problem. So they like run away from the eagles. But I do like the visual to show that they're like their size and everything. And also we do get a quick little Gwaihir line where Gandalf is like, hey, sorry dude, can I get a lift? And he's like, yeah, I would take you even if you were made of stone. And I'm like, oh.
Love
It
it.
is true. Yes, I loved that.
Because like
And
most of the time the eagles kind of protest a little bit when you ask them for a favor. They're like, all right, but not to the ends of the earth, buddy, you know. But this time they're like,
Gandalf. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
a guy.
I
Yeah.
got you.
Yeah.
My dude Gandalf. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I totally get why they couldn't have talking eagles in
Yeah.
the movies. It's really hard to do talking animals.
Mm.
It's one of the reasons why Chronicles of Narnia, it's such a challenge to make
Yeah.
those films kind of like majestic in a way that
Yeah.
they are in the books. So I understand not having talking animals.
Yeah.
They would have had to do the mind speak thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
I
could have
think
done that.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, where they just kind of like look at each other and they, yeah.
There's understanding.
Mhm.
There's a moth.
Yes, yes, that's what we get instead. You're
I
right.
do kind of love the moth,
Yes,
though.
the moth.
Again, it's bringing it back to nature and bringing it back to some like the connection
smallest
between
things,
the
yeah.
smallest- yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I
was-
do love that line from Wicked.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one.
I think that
So-
moth deserves a name by this point. I mean, it's shown up
know.
several times and saved him many times. It
He's a
deserves
good moth.
to live in a little, I don't know what moths want to live in, but he should have it as a pet and just carry it around.
Little
in a
shrine, Gandalf and the moth.
little lantern
Yeah.
thing.
Little
yeah.
little side adventure of the two of them kind of going off on their own.
And we have a spin-off show.
Ah. I'd watch it.
I
Yeah,
would.
no
It's just Gandalf whispering to a moth and them doing epic things.
Yeah.
I know.
Yes.
It's so funny. And I just
One
imagine
day.
someone to be like, hey, is this a Gandalf moth or is this just like a regular moth? Like somebody's just getting
What are you
excited.
talking to that for? It won't talk back.
Like, do we revere this moth or do we like ignore it?
Yeah, like
Difference.
You that moth.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. So yeah, so speaking of eagles, our boys get a lift, and you know, then segue to the chapter Field of Cormallen. It's really like not in the movies. I mean, there's the scene of Frodo waking up, which is inspired by this. But of course, in the book, you know, Frodo and Sam wake up in the same room. You know, of course, it's Gandalf to wake them up. It's very Rivendell-ish, but they're an Ithilien. In case anybody didn't know, they're an Ithilien. They haven't made it all the way back to Minas Tirith yet, and you know, I feel like that scene could totally be an Ithilien, because the next shot after they're all like laughing together is Minas Tirith, so that could imply that they've changed location. So like that's fine, and I get that they, you know, have the fellowship kind of reunite in this way, and like, but Sam is the last one to like enter the room, and they just kind of like smile sadly yet knowingly at each other. And I'm not saying that this is like a bad choice, but I honestly don't know how I feel about it compared to like them being in the same room together and experiencing everything together.
I have always felt the same. I've always understood the choice, and I
Yeah.
respect it, and I do like it, but I don't know if I would like it better than something else. And
Right.
I don't want it to be joyous, you know. I don't want it to be. But it is weird. It is weird to have him kind of come in last. I think it might be that more than anything that has me. It's not the look they share. The look they share is perfect, I think.
Yeah.
But it's that him kind of coming in last is so undeserving
Yeah.
for what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
that having that moment so close to
Sorry, I just picture them all in the hallway lining up to get to Frodo's room, and Legolas and Gimli just shoving Sam aside, being
Yeah.
like, us first.
A little bit. I'm like, why are you in a different room? Like he's obviously, they were both wearing kind of like the same nightgown type situation. Like they have their own accommodations, but like they all show up to Frodo's room. I don't know. I'm just like, you can't really know.
There's something odd about it. There's something that I can't really put my finger on. But yeah, in the book, it's like Sam wakes up later and he's like, oh, Frodo's still sleeping. And Frodo's like, I've been up. I'm
Yeah.
waiting on you.
I love that book part. Yeah.
It's so cute. And then, Gandalf is telling them, like, I mean, obviously, like, oh, wow, shit, Gandalf is here, I guess. And, Gandalf is telling them about, like, it's the whatever day of the new year or whatever day of April in the Shire reckoning. And I'm just like, okay, that's cool. Gandalf coming in with dates always. And, then he takes them to, I mean, they first thing they do is they go see Aragorn, really, the king, and it's this moment where, and then there's a feast afterwards, but the moment where Sam realizes that it's Aragorn that's the king, because Gandalf being freaking Gandalf, he like doesn't say like, oh yeah,
you'll go to see the king, you'll go to see the who's the king.
Like, he's not like telling them.
They're like, okay.
They're like, sure, I
great,
guess.
another stranger, yay.
Right. And I love that Sam, so he sees Aragorn sitting on a throne, and it's not like the throne, but there's a throne here. And he says, well, if this isn't the crown of all, Strider, I'm still asleep. And the way Aragorn responds is just, I mean, I cry a lot of the time when I read this line. He says, yes, Sam, Strider, it is a long way, is it not, from Bree, where you did not like the look of me? A long way for us all, but yours has been the darkest road. Ooh, I had to like clench my fist. I'm about to
breathe.
It gets me, because it's just like.
But what a way to sum up the journey, right? From when you saw me and Bree and did not like me, and to now, and you're overjoyed to see me on the throne. Like, yeah, like,
and just the acknowledgement that, like, not to Frodo, but to Sam, that yours has been the darkest road. And I know it could be referring to both of them, but he's saying it to Sam, and this is like, they don't talk that much to each other, and so it's just, I love that he picks out that, that it's Sam and Aragorn's talking to each other rather than Frodo and Aragorn, which is more typical. And like
such respect.
Yes, and so much understanding between them of what has happened. And Aragorn, having seen Sam take care of Frodo literally on the road for so long, he has to know, without anybody saying anything, that it's Sam that got Frodo to where he needed to be,
Absolutely. Tear, cue the tear. It's like, and when you're reading that, it is, I mean, it's tear after tear. There are like quote after quote after quote that just, when Sam hears the singing, when at the,
oh my god, yes,
it's just everything. And then in the movie too, I think they do a good job. You bow to no one. Okay, let me just cry right now.
Yeah, they I love that they do that, because Aragorn does bow before them here, and leads them to the throne, and they sit beside him. And I love the way that they do it, like after his coronation. It's very beautifully done. I think that that's one of the things, like, I've been trying to like think through my thoughts as we go about like how I feel about the books and the movies, with this direct comparison that we're doing. And like, I think for sure that Fellowship is still my favorite, but there is something so incredibly heartwarming. I think Return of the King has a lot of heart, like especially at the end here. Like once we get past the Battle of the Pelennor Fields and Peter can't like just blow everything up, I mean, like, he loves a good battle scene. I'll give it to him, but when we have these moments between the characters, I mean, that's what I eat up,
Yeah. The moments of eucatastrophe as well, like, yes. Peter Jackson did not ignore that. I mean, it's written in, so you kind of can't, but it's very powerful moment, like, what is it, joy as poignant as grief?
Yes.
But
yes,
so it's powerful, and you feel that when you're reading it, and I think there's moments in the movies where you feel that when you're watching it too. I never felt like there was like 10 endings. When I got out of that theater and people were like, there were like 10 endings, I was like, what are you talking about?
I was like, dude, it should not have ended.
Yeah, I was like, it was only 3 hours.
Yeah, I was like, it should have been 5.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember seeing it in theaters and people standing up several times, and I'm just sitting there, I'm like, no, wait,
Nope.
stop, we're missing
I
a
know.
whole section.
Wait until it
Yeah.
says the end,
Yeah.
psychos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was ready for it to just keep on. I was like, okay, and now begin Sam's story. I'll
Yeah.
wait, you know?
Yeah, I want to see all his mayorships. Like, listen,
Yes.
we're sitting here till the end.
Yeah, you can go
Every
off.
election, I want to see every election.
Election.
I do. I want to see Merry and Pippin doing their thing.
I want to see
Um,
Pippin get married.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm glad that we do get to see Sam get married. But when you were talking about eucatastrophe and that description, and then it just made me think about when Gandalf is speaking to them for the first time, you know, when he says the great shadow has departed, and then he laughed, and the sound was like music or like water in a parched land. And as he listened, Sam listened, the thought came to Sam that he had not heard laughter, the pure sound of merriment, for days upon days without count. It fell upon his ears like the echo of all the joys he had ever known. But he himself burst into tears. Then, as a sweet rain will pass down a wind of spring, and the sun will shine out the clearer, I think people recognize that one,
Mhm.
his tears ceased and his laughter welled up, and laughing he sprang from his bed.
He's just so in
So
touch with
beautiful.
his emotions, and it's just so well written, and that is beautiful. That is a beautiful way to describe, and a very realistic way to describe how overwhelming all these, you know, all the emotions you can be.
Yes. I mean, it's just the way that Tolkien is able to tap into not only these moments of like really visceral fear, but these overwhelming moments of joy.
Joy, yes, he describes joy very interestingly.
Yeah.
Joy as
So-
deep as sorrow. I when I was doing my reread for this podcast, that passage really stood out to me this time as well. And I love that it's described as song as well, because I think songs are so important to Middle Earth. So
Yeah.
important to Tolkien. But the ability, if you read the Silmarillion, you know that like there's literal song battles. This is an important thing. So there's so many analogies within that passage, but to first compare it to a song, and then to again bringing in that nature, it's all tied into one another, and it's all for Sam to get that too from an outside source is so important, because he's been the strength for Frodo for so long. So there's just someone else to kind of open that gate a little bit for him, just kind of open it up, and kind of have that contagious laughter. It's so beautiful. It's like what he needed. It's the healing he needed in that moment.
Yeah, I think that there's you know, I feel like there's sometimes like a misconception around like who Gandalf is in some ways, and it's like sure, he's like a mover and shaker and he can lead on the battlefield, but at the same time, like he's providing emotional support, like, you know what I mean, like and we'll see that again later when things get like a different kind of sad, but just the way that he, you know, I mean, he's described as like quick to laugh, and also just how he's able to, you know, allow everybody to kind of feel their feels, which I really love about him.
We're gonna bawl our way through the last episode, aren't we?
I know.
We're not even there yet, and I'm already just holding on to it. Like, oh, every quote just.
I'm gonna be like, excuse me.
I'm hearing the music in my head. Oh, like, but back, like way back to the movies. I know I probably should have brought this up when we do, but the music, making all these
God.
scenes all the more poignant when Sam picks Frodo up. And the beginning of that into the West. And it's
Yes,
just like,
every time Into the West comes on, it's such a good song, but like the way that they sprinkle it in through these like big epic moments where it's like it is really scoring their resolve and their, you know, determination to keep going even when they don't have a lot of hope. And then we see it again at the end of the movie where it is more it is more hopeful with like the descriptions of Valinor and all of that. So it's interesting. It's beautifully woven in, and we have definitely not talked about the music enough, but I think that is a huge part of how these movies have like carved a special place in people's hearts, because it's not like, obviously there's the acting is insane, like we've talked about, and the visuals are gorgeous, but the way that they are able to get away with the loss of so many lines, I think it is because of the way that Howard Shore scored these films, and really was something that Anna said previously, like is able to really establish a sense of place also through the music as well. So we've got this like, this world feels very vast without ever having to explain it to us in a lot of ways, and it feels very rich, and I think that the music has a big part of that.
Absolutely. It's stunning. I have no words to add to that except like in total agreement. I love the elves have kind of their own theme, and you always know when like that hint of elvish hope is coming. Yeah, the swell of music during that scene, like you said, Callie. It's that, and Sam, you can picture Sam's face, right? As he pulls up Frodo, it's like that moment combined, you can't help but cry and feel like the full weight, the full emotional weight of what's happening. It's so brilliantly done.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I need a little catharsis after this.
I need to like rewatch it a couple times.
I
See it now.
I know. I feel like I should go rewatch the scene, because when I was watching it, you know, I'm like taking notes and like I'm pausing it. I'm like, what exactly did you say? And you know where are the cuts happening? But to just, you know, when I'm able to just sit there and watch it and kind of let it like wash over me in a way, and just like being in that moment with Frodo and Sam, it's like, oh, and not to mention like the absolute the moment when it blows up, like the mountain blows up, and you see everyone else in the Fellowship's face go from happiness to despair,
Frodo.
and
Right.
and you know, like the way that their faces change is also so on point.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
because that's not described really in the book either. And but like, what would that moment be without them reacting to that explosion?
Yeah. It's so real too, to have those hand in hand, those emotions hand in hand, just so visible on your face. And
like, how often have you been there? You're like, we did it. Oh crap, we did it.
Yeah, that means that this must have also happened.
Yeah, and the fact that like, so we see them do that, but then at the same time Gandalf is like, fuck it, we gotta go make sure, we gotta double check like they're okay.
Go.
Yeah. So
it's the not giving up on Frodo until the very last end too. Sam doesn't do it. Gandalf doesn't do it.
Yes, I think that is one thing that we've talked about, but it like comes full circle here, where it's like never at any point do any of the Fellowship members ever say, well, there's no way Frodo is still going, or there's no way that, you know, Merry and Pippin
in a ditch somewhere.
Yeah, like they until they learn otherwise, we are going to operate under the assumption that everybody is doing the thing that we set out to do, you know, and that's how they're able to defeat Sauron, you know.
Yeah.
But that is like Aragorn's nickname is Estelle, is hope. So
it's a good nickname.
It's a good nickname. Yeah.
I mean, it's so good. I mean, it's interesting to think about like how I mean, obviously he's the hope for his line and like the hope for the kingdom, but he also like helps revive hopes, you know, like as a part of his character, which I'm like, how did you get to be like that?
Studying Gandalf.
Yeah.
I dare say. Mhm.
Yeah, when you grow up in Rivendell,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I kind of have some, and you're of the Númenórean line. I guess there's some inherent wisdom that you walk out with.
Yeah.
I
If you're
suppose.
lucky.
Yes, if you're lucky. Yeah.
Sorry, Boromir. Yeah, I mean, this is. I mean, it's crazy to think that we're already here at the destruction of Mount Doom, and all for the rest of the book. I mean, it is. I mean, it's slightly different. It's not so much like us trying to meet. We've met our goal, and so now it's kind of like what happens next. And for the chapter wise, that means next time we're talking about the steward and the king. So Aragorn officially accepting. I mean, like everybody's already calling him king, and he's like, but now we do the ceremonial parts, and we start to make the trip home for the hobbits, and
it'll be interesting because there's so much more in the book
mhm.
now. I mean, always, but now it's really starting. There's like hundreds of pages still in the book.
Yes, it's gonna get weird.
That happens, that they really have to kind of
couple of sharp deviations that we're gonna have to make.
Yeah, there's like whole chapters worth of stuff that it's just like, I think it'll be interesting when we're like doing the direct comparison, to be like, okay, like they just flash to this and then that's all we get from that chapter, or like the scouring. Not a one.
We're gonna talk about Sharky, are we?
Yeah, I mean, I will talk about Sauron as much as y'all will let me. So
it's such like a petty thing when you get to that chapter. You're like, what, this dude? Like,
yeah,
like, really? You came here? Like, it's so ridiculous.
And it's gonna be crazy when we get to Homeward Bound next time, because we're gonna run into him on the road, not doing so hot, and and it's almost like, because he wasn't in the Shire yet, so it's like he didn't do stuff in the Shire for that long of a period, but he like wreaked a lot of havoc.
Little menace.
Yeah, it's just, he's so petty.
Yeah, it's petty. It's an ugliness. An ugliness moves pretty fast, I think.
Yeah, it's that's true.
But it's funny too, like how often do you see like one of the big bad, people like at the end of all things, like this great epic dismissal of Sauron, and then you've got cut to Saruman just kind of like weakly walking around, and you're like, oh yeah, you would kind of maybe see him walking around being pathetic.
It's funny, it's just funny that like Treebeard promises to keep him, and then he's like, he can't do much, and then it's like, well, he can do enough.
He can do enough. Yeah. Which we will see next time.
We sure will. And with that, I just want to say, like, thank you so much to you both for this lovely conversation. There's a lot of highs and lows in this episode, so this was really fun, and I appreciate you both so much for diving in with me and talking Mount Doom.
I mean, what an honor to have these chapters. Like this is a big chapter to have, so I am very appreciative and very honored to jump in here and talk about it. So thank you so much for having me.
We really appreciate you being on, and when we're talking Hobbit, we'll call you again.
Let me know. I'll be here.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See you next time.